Welcome back to the Vinyl FAQ series, and today's question is, how long does it take to cut a record? This is a great question and quite a common one as well, because not a lot of people know that cutting a record actually takes place in real time. So if you're cutting a 3-minute pop song, the cutting of that piece of music will take 3 minutes. And if you're cutting a 20-minute side of an album, the cutting time will take 20 minutes. Now, there's a little bit more to it than just cutting the actual sound, so I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the process. So, as well as the actual music that fits on a record, there's also a couple of things that we have to do before and after the music to make sure the records play really well. Before the music starts, the cutting head is lowered onto the record. And then to create a bit of space on the outside of the record, what we do is cut what's called a lead-in groove. And this is simply a wider groove that takes up a little bit of space on the outside of the record before the music starts. And that's really just to help you find the groove when you're placing the playback needle down. So if you imagine if the music started right at the outer edge of the record, then it might be tricky to actually find the beginning of the song. So we cut a little bit of silence and we wind the cutting head in a little bit to create some wider grooves on the very outside for just a few millimeters. And as I say, that helps you actually get your playback arm down onto the record, and there's a second or a few seconds of silence before the music actually starts. And then because every record is a standard size but not every track is the same length, what we do after the music is finished is cut what's called a run out or a lead out groove at the end, just to fill up the dead space that occurs between the end of the music and the middle of the record. And that serves two functions. One is to fill up the space, and the other is to bring the playback arm close to the centre of the record, and then it gets triggered to lift up and return back to its starting position. Now, not all record players have that function in the playback arm, but that's a sort of why that was created. Imagine if we had a really short track, say like a 2-minute track, it would only take up a little bit of space on the record, and then the playback arm would just stay there, and it would just keep spinning in that place. And that, if you did it for too long, would start to wear out your record. And then after we've cut the lead out groove that brings your playback arm closer to the middle, we have to do a locked groove. And that basically is one rotation of the record that cuts back on itself. So whereas the main groove is one complete spiral that goes all the way in, getting smaller and smaller, when we get to the end, what we do is stop moving the cutting head, so it's not continuously moving in, creating a spiral. It stops at a certain point and creates a groove that cuts in on itself, and that's called a locked groove. And that means when the playback head gets to that locked groove, instead of continuing to move inwards, it just stays in one place, and it'll just stay on that same groove over and over. And if it isn't one of the self-returning types of playback arms, it will just stay there, and you'll just hear it. The record will keep spinning, and you'll just hear it you'll get a little pop as it's going around. A little bit of static. And that's just to keep the arm in one place when the record's finished and stop the arm going across. And if it touches the label, the actual pickup of the playback arm will just create a really loud, scraping, terrible noise, which will shock you a bit if you've nodded off at the end of your record. So the grooves that I've just mentioned, the lead-in groove, the lead-out groove, and the locked groove, only take a few extra seconds really to cut. It's the music that takes the bulk of the time. So if you said you've got a 3-minute song you're cutting, it would take 3 minutes plus an extra 5 or 10 seconds to cut the lead-in, lead-out, and locked grooves as well. But by far the longest part of the process when cutting records is the setting up and the maintenance of the machines. These machines behind me take a lot of maintaining, a lot of care. There's a lot of setting up to do. There's also a test cut to do, so you can cut a little bit, listen back, make any adjustments, and then cut the actual record. So there's lots to do. Some days it might take me a couple of hours to get the machines turned on, get everything cleaned, get everything calibrated, do a few test cuts, listen to them back, make a couple more adjustments, and then I'm ready to cut. Whereas some days, if I've already done that and everything's running smoothly, it could be a case of just doing a little test cut for a minute, listening to it and going, yeah, that sounds great, and then I can crack on and actually do the cutting of the records. So to answer the question, how long does it take to cut a record? It's kind of a tough one. To cut the music, it just takes as long as the music or the piece that you're cutting. But the entire process can have an extra half an hour setting up time, an extra couple of hours setting up time, and anywhere from 5 or 10 minutes to half an hour to do some test cuts, listen back, and then make some adjustments. It's a lot easier and quicker to cut a 7-inch single than it is to cut a 12-inch record, an album. What sometimes can happen is you might cut side A of an album and all that goes perfectly, flip it round, start cutting side B, and then right at the end something might go wrong and you have to abandon it and start again. So that's 20 minutes per side plus a bit of changing over time. Could be an hour, totally gone, you've got to start again. So it really is, as I've said a few times about the process, it really is a labour of love. You've got to love working with these machines, doing lots of setting up, testing, calibrating, fixing, troubleshooting and all that kind of stuff. So it's great fun cutting records, but it is time consuming and it's hard work. So there you go. I hope that's been interesting and at least kind of answered the question for you. As always, leave any questions down in the comments and I'll get back to you. Please like, share and subscribe, it really helps. And keep your eyes peeled for loads more videos coming on cutting records, mastering for vinyl and navigating the music industry as an independent artist. Thanks for watching, I'll see you next time.